Closed captioning for Ciao Italia was provided by a grant from the Order Sons of Italy in America.
Okay, just cut them in small pieces and then you can roll them off the tines of this. Ciao, I'm Marianne Esposito.
And I'm Becky Lane.
And today we're making ricotta gnocchi.
And if I can do it, you can do it.
You got it. Ciao, I'm Marianne Esposito, and welcome to the Amalfi Coast. Don't tell anybody, but I planted 2 French varieties. You are so smart, Cyril. Come on, get that baseball arm moving. That's it. And if this doesn't say country Italian, inexpensive, cooking from home, I don't know what does. Did I say a little? Right in there. Isn't that beautiful? This is such an earthy dish.
You know, and my grandmother always used the stems too.
This just reminds me so much of childhood. This is no sweat cooking, really. I could just toss all day. Perfect.
Ciao!
Funding for Ciao Italia was made possible by Mohegan Sun, a dining, shopping, and entertainment destination on the East Coast. Located off I-395 in Uncasville, Connecticut. Mohegan Sun, a world at play.
In Norwich, we sure like to bake. It's the home of King Arthur flour, and we believe in baking with only the finest, all-natural ingredients.
Today, Becky and I are going to make ricotta zucchini gnocchi. Now, do you know what gnocchi means in Italian?
No.
It means dumpling, and lots of cultures have types of gnocchi. And you're probably familiar with potato gnocchi,
yes.
which your grandmother and mother
yes.
have made. And there are squash gnocchi and spinach gnocchi. But today, we're going to make ricotta zucchini gnocchi. So you want to start out with really small zucchini, Becky, because if you start with large zucchini, you've got a lot of water.
Oh.
And that means we're going to have to add a lot of flour. We don't want lead sinkers. We want really something that's light and fluffy. So what I like to do is grate this.
Okay.
So I'm going to have you grate that on a cheese grater. So cut it in half. So if you're going to do this, you're going to buy very small zucchini. And while she's doing that, I'm going to work with the flour. So for this, we're using unbleached all-purpose flour. So we need about a cup and a half. But you know, there really is no recipe for gnocchi. It's all in the hands. So with experience, and that's why you're here.
So I can learn.
You can learn. You'll know when you have enough flour. This is about a cup and a half of flour. We're going to dump it right on the board.
Okay.
Because we're going to make this the way it's made traditionally.
I remember my grandmother making it this way.
Yes, which this is what we call this, the fontana, right? We make this in the fontana. The exact same way you'd be making if you were making fresh pasta, right?
Okay.
So we've got our flour. And with this, we want some cheese. And here we're going to use, this is pecorino.
Pecorino.
So that's what kind of cheese?
Pecorino
Romano, which is sheep's milk. So
Yep.
this is a sheep's milk cheese. So we're going to sprinkle that right around our fontana with the flour.
Boy, this does have a lot of water. I never.
Yeah, so what are we going to do with that? So it still has some water. We want to make sure that's very dry. So let's see how much you have. That's great. And you notice she did it on a paper towel because we were talking earlier and I was giving her a few tips. Huh? So what are we going to do with this now?
We're going to roll it in the paper towel to kind of soak up all that water, to get all the water out of there.
Exactly. So you want to do this maybe an hour and a half before you're ready to put this together. So while that's just draining, we have some. So why don't you unroll that one and show them what that looks like. And while you're doing that, I'm going to get some salt. And just a pinch of salt on our fontana. So let's show them the difference.
Yeah, big difference.
Look at how dry that is. That's nice and dry. So we know we're not going to add a lot of excess flour. So before we put that in, here's the ricotta part. So I like to use whole milk ricotta for this, but if you wanted to use low fat, you could. And I'll tell you, this is very messy. Remember, I said this is a messy procedure. We're going to dump it right there, right on top of that flour. We've got our flour, our cheese. We've got salt. Now I need you to beat up an egg. So there's one egg. So beat that up. I'm going to take your zucchini here, and we're going to put this right on top of this.
Could you pass me a fork?
Yes. Okay,
you.
just lightly beat that up. And now, you know this, but maybe they don't know this at home, that a gnocchi like this is a first course, right?
Yes.
So this is what you would have before you would have, let's say, your meat course. And you could put a variety of different sauces with this, but today we're going to do a basic tomato sauce.
Okay.
So now, watch, I'm just going to burrow down here. Looks pretty just
It does
like
look
that,
pretty.
doesn't it? Okay, dump the egg on.
Messy.
Okay. And now we have to use our hands. So I'll start and then I'm
Okay.
gonna let you finish. So you just kind of move this around. All of this, I know, it looks very messy, but you'd be surprised the nice lump of dough that we're going to get out of this. So you don't want to be afraid to use your hands. I'm having you do this like this because this is not something you would want to do in a food processor. Because,
Why is that?
well, the cheese, the ricotta cheese, if you whip it up in the processor, it's going to make it just too watery.
Okay.
And then you're going to have to add a lot more flour. So I have it now into what's called a shaggy mass. So I'm going to let you work on that.
Shaggy mass.
Yeah, I'm going to let you work on that and get that into a ball. I'm going to wash my hands.
Does it help to use a dough scraper?
It helps a lot to use a dough scraper, and we have one right here. So once
gonna
you
go
have
ahead
it, and you can tell right now
Yep.
that we're not going to add more flour to that. That's just about right. So here's your dough scraper.
Thank you.
So now this is a real good aid. It helps you pick up the dough, turn the dough over. You're good. You are.
Hey,
you don't
I've
need
learned
a
from the
lesson.
best.
You know, Becky has been on my show since she was a little girl, so this is nothing new to her. She's seen me make gnocchi many times, and I think obviously she was learning by just osmosis here what
right.
to do. That's great. That's gorgeous. So now you want to knead that a little bit, and you may need just a
Just a
tad,
little.
but you want to control the amount of flour. So really control that. Okay, go ahead, roll. And once you have this together, you've got to let this rest a bit because it will be much easier to roll out once the flour has absorbed the liquid, all those liquids that you put in. So it still needs a little bit more flour. You want it to look a little smoother than that. Get that dough scraper and just pick it up and turn it around. So I would say once you make it like this, cover it with a bowl, put it aside or in your refrigerator for about an hour, hour and a half, and then you're ready to go. Then you're ready to do the fun part. Okay, want me to
What do you
take a turn
think?
here?
Yes.
I think that looks good. I'm going to scrape up all the rest of this. All right, so let's put this, let's get the one that we did ahead of time for
Okay.
them. And this one we're just going to set aside. That's good. And this
right.
we put on
do the
there,
same thing.
little flour, put the bowl
Oh, yeah.
over it, you're ready to go. Okay, so we're
grab
still
some
sticky, but now you're going to go grab some flour. So here's our ball of dough. We want to sprinkle a little bit on our board. You notice we're working on a wood board. You could also just work on your counter, but it will be a little bit messy. So we're going to work with this in small pieces. So I'm going to give you a piece, Becky.
I'm just going to take a little off my
And
hand.
I'm going to take a piece, put it there, and the rest of this we're just going to put aside until we need it. All right, now there are several ways to do this. We can do this the old lazy way, or we can do it the real traditional way. Now I have to say, this is an art that is dying even in Italy, so I think it's wonderful that we're passing this on
I'm
to your generation.
extremely excited to learn to do
So
this.
we are just rolling this out under our hands very lightly till we have a nice rope, probably about the thickness of your middle finger. If you wanted to make them thinner than that, you could. That looks great. So now we need to cut them up. So there's a knife,
Okay.
and we just want to cut them
How big?
about that big.
Okay.
You can make them small, you can make them large. And as I say, we're going to do this with a tomato sauce, but you could also do it with a butter sauce. You could do it with a gorgonzola cheese sauce. There are many ways that you could sauce these. So
Okay.
once you have them cut up like
Now,
that.
I know when you get gnocchi in the restaurants, they always have the little ridges, the grooves.
We're going to make those.
All right.
We're going to do those because I said, you know, if you were lazy, you would just cut them and just leave them like that.
Right.
But what kind of character does that have? That doesn't have much character. We need to do things that have character.
It's not exciting.
No. So, how are we going to form them? Well, you can use a butter paddle like this, which you can find in any kitchenware store. I
Okay.
have several of these. Or you could just use a forchetta, a fork. So we want to take some flour,
Okay.
put it down on the board. Just sprinkle, and you may want to sprinkle just a little over that. Sometimes I put a little on my fork.
Okay.
And then the action is to take one and just roll it. Just roll it right off the tines of the fork. If you have some flour there, it's going to make it easy for you to get it off the fork so it doesn't stick. And what happens there is you see, you create that little groove on the underside. That's there to trap sauce, and you've got that nice little ridge on the other side.
Nice.
So you make them like that, and when I do them, Becky, I put them on floured towel, just like this, not touching each other. And I do a
What
whole
is that?
slew of them.
Just to keep it
This
separated.
is just to keep them separated so they don't all stick together.
Okay.
Because you're going to put these in boiling water. And I'll tell you another little trick. If you want to do this ahead of time, say you're having a dinner party for you and your husband Colin and a few friends, you can make these all ahead of time, cook them to the point where you've boiled them, and then take them out and put them in a baking dish that has just a little bit of olive oil. Put them in the refrigerator, covered. Then when you're ready to serve them, you can do this the day before. Just take them out, you heat them up, you sauce them in a saucepan, and they're ready to go. Oh. You're doing a fabulous job.
You're moving a little faster than I
Well, you know, I have a few years on you. I have a few years on you. So you can do this with other ingredients besides zucchini. Like I said, if you wanted to make all spinach, I would add like a tablespoon of cooked spinach to the dough, pureed spinach to the dough.
Does the ricotta just make it a little lighter?
Much lighter.
Okay.
Potato gnocchi are one of my husband's favorite, but they are a little heavier. And I have to say, you've got really the knack here for somebody who hasn't made gnocchi very
I
much.
love gnocchi, so I'm so excited that I'm finally able to.
So let's do a few more because, you know what, I'm thinking of having you over for dinner later. What do you think?
Yes.
Do you think you can come over after school?
Absolutely.
And we'll have this for supper. We'll have our gnocchi di ricotta e zucca. All right, let me cut a few more, and you go ahead and roll those off.
All right.
And then we'll be ready to cook these. Now, when we cook these, we want to make sure that they're absolutely perfect and they're going to hold together. Here's a little trick. Probably should have done this ahead of time, but it's a little trick you can try at home.
Okay.
Once you have the dough made up, make one. Make one. Dump it in boiling water. If it holds together, you're good to go. If it doesn't hold together, you've got to add what? More flour. More flour. So that's a little trick. So that is going to save you a headache. You don't want to make up the whole dough, form them, then put them in a pan and find out that they're all going to fall apart. So
That would not make for a good dinner party.
So I think we have enough here for you and me. What do you think?
Yeah.
Actually, this recipe is going to
Absolutely.
serve about 6 to 8 people.
Okay.
All right. Well, let's see.
Gee.
You know, it's getting
Oh,
late.
gracious. I've got to get going. I have a classroom of students waiting.
Okay, well, ciao.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
I
see
will
you
see
later.
you later.
I got to wash my hands. Now, we're ready to cook those gnocchi. So let me show you what you have to do. You want to get a big pot of boiling water going, just like this. And then you want to salt that. And I think this is a really nifty idea. I don't know if you've seen these, but this is just the exact amount of salt you need to cook about a pound of pasta. So you put one in. Other than that, if you're not using these, put about a tablespoon of sea salt into your pot of boiling water. Then you get those gnocchi, and here they are. And now to get them in the pan, I just take the entire towel and drop them in. Just shake them in, because they're very delicate. Just shake them in, and you let them go now until they bob to the top. When they start bobbing to the top, I know that they're ready to take out. So remember, I told you that we were going to have a sauce with this. So I'm going to have tomato sauce because I think this is perfect with the ricotta gnocchi. So here we have just fresh tomato sauce. You can find this recipe on the Ciao Italia website. This is just plum tomatoes, a little olive oil, garlic, basil, a little red wine, salt and pepper. You cook it for about 20 minutes, you've got sauce. So I'm going to put some in a pan. When you mix gnocchi, you want to do it in a big saute pan like this. And I don't want too much sauce because I want to be able to see the gnocchi. So I'm going to add just about that much. But you know, if you do not have time to make sauce, you're just really stressed, you could always get yourself a jar of a good commercially prepared sauce. That would be perfectly fine too. So the choice is yours. So now we've got our sauce heating up here. I'm going to get the heat up on that just a little bit. And let's see what's happening, because with these gnocchi, you want to make sure that you shake off all of the excess water. You don't want any excess water on the gnocchi because it's going to make your sauce very thin. So look right here. You can see how they're starting to bob to the top. They don't take very long. Once they all come to the surface, it takes about 2 minutes for them to cook. You want them to remain plump and light, and you don't want to overcook them so that they become tough and mushy. So as they bob to the top, you gather them up like so, you see? You shake off as much water as you can. Use a spider like this. Or if you don't have something like this, you could use a sieve with a handle. And I take them and I put them right there, right on top of that sauce. And remember, when I was making these with Becky, I told her she could come over to have these later for dinner, so I hope she will. So you take them all out, get them in, and then you just very easily, with a wooden spoon, toss them all in the sauce. So let me just get the rest of these. And I cooked some a little earlier as well, because you can never eat just one dish of gnocchi. You got to have several helpings. So we're going to move those around in the sauce. And you see what happens. Those little grooves that we made, all the sauce gets absorbed in there. And here are some more that I made earlier. I'm going to put all of those in. A recipe like this, I'm going to serve about 8 people. So you want to gauge the amount of sauce. You want to lightly coat them. You don't want to drown them. They look absolutely delicious. Let me see how we're doing here, because I can add now the rest of these. All light and fluffy. Aren't they beautiful? This is one of my favorite types of pasta. I'm going to give that just a little bit more sauce. And now we're ready to serve those. So when they're really nice and hot, that's when you want to take them out of the pan. This just reminds me so much of growing up at home when we had gnocchi just about every Sunday. All right, now I'm going to turn that off and get out the platter for this. So when you're ready to serve this, get out a nice kind of oval dish like that. And then take your gnocchi and just put them right in, just like that. Beautiful. Then you just need to give them a little bit of cheese. Aren't they gorgeous? So I like to use a pecorino cheese for this. So here is a pecorino romano. That's a sheep's milk cheese. And there you have it. Gnocchi made with ricotta and zucchini. Becky's gonna love this. All right, now that we have that, we need to talk about zucchini in another form. And that is making a tortino di patate e zucca, which is a potato and a zucchini kind of pie or torte. And you want to do it just in a regular pie dish. So I put a little bit of olive oil in the base of a 9-inch pie dish. You just brush that well and set that aside. And then for the zucchini, all I did was saute them in a little bit of olive oil. I just cut up zucchini in rounds, sauteed them, add a little bit of salt and pepper, And we added a little bit of mint to that. So this is all ready to go. So there's some mint in there. So we have that. So then you just mix that around a little bit because you're going to be layering this. So that's the zucchini part. The potatoes I pre-cooked just a bit. I just cooked them a little bit because now what I want to do is I want to get them really nice and thin. So I put them on my mandolin. You don't have a mandolin, you're doing this by hand. And you want to just slice them like that across the mandolin. You got to be really careful with a gadget like this. So you wind up with thin slices of potato. And I'm going to add them to the potatoes I already have. You see how nice that is? Because it's all going to bake beautifully. So in here we have salt and pepper, a little bit of olive oil, and thyme. Now we can build this. And what you do is you start with your potatoes, just making a nice layer in the base of your bake dish. I think this is an absolutely wonderful casserole to have with any kind of meats or even with poultry or fish. You can make it ahead of time and then you can reheat it. So I put a layer of potato, then a layer of zucchini. And if you didn't want to use this type of potato, you could use something else. I like to use a Yukon Gold. So the zucchini go in, then we give that a little bit of salt, not much because we already have it, and some cheese. Again, we're using Pecorino Romano, which is a sheep's milk cheese. And now we start again with another layer of potatoes. And we're going to bake this at 350 degrees. It's going to take, about 35, 40 minutes. You want your last layer to be potatoes because it's going to be nice and crusty. And then you start with the zucchini again, making another layer. I just think this is a nice way to use up, let's say, zucchini from your garden. When you're just sick of having it the same old way, try this. And depending on how many zucchini you cut up or how many potatoes you have, you just keep going and building the layers. So this is going to be my last layer of potato. And I'm going to sprinkle this with cheese now and I have just enough potato. Boy, this has just been the perfect day in the kitchen. Okay, so that's the end of the potato. More cheese, folks, over the top. A little drizzle of extra virgin olive oil. This is gorgeous. And we need aluminum foil. You want to bake this covered for about 10 minutes. Remember, the vegetables are already pre-cooked, so we're just finishing this off. So this goes into a 350-degree oven for about 10 minutes covered. Then you're going to take the cover off and finish baking it for another 10 minutes, allowing it to get nice and crusty. So I have one all ready to go, and I want to show you what that looks like. Just marvel at that. Isn't that gorgeous? Potatoes and zucchini in a tortino. Fabulous. So there you have it. What you can do with zucchini, ricotta gnocchi, and this beautiful potato and zucchini casserole. Becky, I'm really glad you made it back from school because while you were gone, I cooked up the gnocchi for you. So thanks for helping me make them. Don't they look beautiful?
They do.
I'm going to give you a nice helping there.
Thank you.
And give myself some, of course. And I made just a real simple tomato sauce to go over these.
It looks very nice.
You know, and I had all that zucchini left over, so I decided to make a potato and zucchini tart. You can try that later on.
Definitely.
Well, thanks for helping me, Becky.
Thank you for teaching me.
Chin chin.
Chin chin.
And until I see you, Nella Cucina, again, I'm Marianne Esposito.
And I'm Becky Lane.
Ciao.
You can make authentic Italian recipes using only a few ingredients. Ciao Italia 5-ingredient favorites brings you first courses, main courses, desserts, and more. It's fully illustrated, autographed by Marianne, available on the web or at this number. Learn more about the culture and cuisine of Italy's many regions and prepare many of their unique recipes by visiting Marianne at her website, ciaoitalia.com. Funding for Ciao Italia was made possible by Mohegan Sun, a dining, shopping, and entertainment destination on the East Coast. Located off I-395 in Uncasville, Connecticut. Mohegan Sun, a world at play.
In Norwich, we sure like to bake. It's the home of King Arthur flour, and we believe in baking with only the finest all-natural ingredients.